Do we know if
There's
Lynn is
right
with
there.
us yet?
Mm-hmm.
He is.
Oh,
Yeah,
let me turn my TV on for you.
I guess I don't need this. Turning your screen on, man, we want to get able to catch it first. We don't want any deep fakes here. Proof of life. Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's been armadillos and crocodiles today.
Oh, no.
it was good lunch.
Oh, wow, great. Hi, Walt.
Good evening, everyone.
Well, let's begin. Let's start with public comment. And Patty.
Do you need roll call?
Patty Perrin.
Roll call, thank you.
Patty Perrin, 215 North Maple
Excuse
Street.
me, Patty, I forgot something. So let's do a roll call.
Maxfield here.
Richardson here.
Moore here.
Freilinger here.
Carl here.
Yeah, anything else?
Okay, so I just had one quick question and I think it'll probably be answered during the discussion on the lighting. So my question is associated with 10.66 dark skies lighting standards.
Give me your page number.
It's page 4
All right.
and it would be number B2.
Yeah.
And it's associated with the downward lighting. And my question is, and I'm gonna use me for an example, I put a new porch light up right by my front door. And it's like a Craftsman style where it's got the little hat on the top kind of thing, but then the part where the bulb is glass
All the way around.
all the way around. And but our neighbor across the street has commented that that is extremely bright.
Mhm.
It's a 60-watt bulb. And we have a bush now that has gotten the leaves and all that, so he doesn't see it. And when it doesn't have leaves, I turn it out because we have a overhead in the corner of our porch, but it's real dim. It's not very bright because of the type of light that's on it. It's a Craftsman style, which has got the color and all that kind of thing in the light itself. So
Got it.
how is that going to play a role
Really good question.
with
I have
the
the
downward lighting?
same question myself. Thank
Okay.
you.
That's it.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Because that's just your standard porch light. There's
Yeah.
nothing odd about that.
And
They're all
there's-
over the place.
Yeah,
And yet it's hitting the guy across the street in the face.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. Thank you.
okay.
Okay, well, let's see. Next is presentations. We don't have any. No public hearing. We're gonna bump committee reports up. Do we have, who would be here for the Economic Development Committee?
I would be.
Oh,
Oh,
Sue.
you're gonna give a report.
I can.
Okay,
Bob is otherwise detained and so is Jenny.
all right.
So, we have not had a meeting since the last planning meeting for 2 reasons. First of all, 3 members of the Economic Development Committee are also on the Downtown Committee. And so that Beverly Cleary event that happened last weekend was taking an enormous amount of time. And they're all moms and working moms. And so there was just not the time in their schedule for us to get it. But the most important reason was because right now we're on hold, waiting for Doug Brooks to give us direction as to where we can go. And that we'll have some direction after this meeting that we have on the 5th of June with all the different committees
All right.
with
well,
him.
Maybe will tell us about that next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
And Bob couldn't be here tonight for his YDA either, so there's nothing, no committee report there.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
And let's go on to other business. Do you have the agenda there in front of you, Walt?
Yes,
All right, does that look like a good order to you? Just we'll go lighting regulations, Title 11, housing, technical assistance, transportation system.
I think that certainly works. I'm not anticipating a lot of time on the Title 11 review. I just want to present that to you. I think the
Yes.
big discussion is just going to be the lighting.
Okay, well then let's start with lighting regulations, staff memorandum.
Okay, real good. Good evening, everyone. Beautiful day in the valley. You asked me to put something together for a dark sky ordinance. And we had a meeting last month that sort of set the parameters. You talked about purpose, and I suggested some definitions and diagrams where we could. You wanted the regulations in Title 10 because you wanted to tie that into the land use action. You wanted the rules to cover everything, commercial, public, industrial, and residential. And you also wanted to put on a time limit. I had two sets of notes. One said 180, another one said 2 years, but that's part of our discussion. And also, since this would be in Title 10, it would be enforced as we would through the violation procedures. So anyway, attached to my memo is an exhibit, and that is the proposed language for chapter 1066, 10.66, and it would be for dark skies lighting standards. Excuse me a moment. So to go through this, the first item is under purpose. We have a purpose statement. I think it was pretty all-inclusive, and I certainly believe I covered the basis for your interest. And I think that was also backed up by the guiding principles. And that had to do with why we're doing this. And I think that's, again, those two, purpose and guiding principles, are pretty consistent with what the commission talked about last month. The next section is definitions, and this is taken from basically the core of this is probably City of Sisters, which I thought did a pretty good job. But I made sure that we had what's ever in the code is put in the definitions. And I'm also suggesting that we take these definitions and put it in chapter 1008. So we have one compendium with all the definitions. Applicability, unless otherwise exempted, the standards will be applicable for all new lighting, and anything that's existing and non-conforming, I'm recommending that they comply with the requirements within 2 years from the effective date. And just for the heck of it, I threw a date out there, September 1, 2024. It just seemed to be a little bit easier to establish a firm date. That can always be changed, be January 1, 2025, whatever works out. Now, the general requirements, this is probably the core of the code, and this applies to all lighting within the city. The first item is shielded. Lights need to be fully shielded, designed and installed to prevent trespass. In other words, the light has to shine where it's really needed and not go migrating to adjacent properties. And it's very interesting, the first sort of public comment had to do with the light that the neighbor was able to see in a very bright light. That light needs to stay basically on the property. And I think that's really what we're after. The next item is maximum brightness. Now, looking at what Sisters had, they broke it down to, you know, if you're multifamily, you get a certain limit. If you're commercial, you get another limit. I just thought to simply say no light can be more than 1,000 lumens seemed to make sense. I think everything else was a little bit overkill. And I think that's something for the Planning Commission to consider. But again, I think it'd be simpler just to look at individual lights than trying to keep track of entire properties. Also, how far does that go? If you have a 10-acre commercial development, just for the sake of argument, that's a real restriction in terms of lighting. So I'm thinking just individual lights probably should be considered. Um, Sisters, no, actually it was Port Orford. They had a thing on non-residential requirements for lighting canopies and eaves and outdoor displays. And I know that was one of the big issues with regard to the bank, but also with the gas station in terms of the lighting. And I'm hoping these might help address those. Again, parking lot, similar. Lighting has to stay on the property downward direction and avoid the light trespass. I think it's important to know that it's obvious if you're passing a property that has lighted parking at late at night or at some point in the evening where the lights are on, you're definitely going to see the light. What you want to avoid is having the light shining down and then shining on the neighbor's properties. And that's really what we're after. We're not saying no lights at all. We want to avoid interfering with our neighbors. Also, I think consistent with some of the comments had to do with a light curfew. When the business is closed, the lights are off. There's also some flexibility for an hour before opening and an hour after closing. So again, kind of shutting down the business here. This does not apply to 24-hour businesses, and also doesn't apply to security lighting. There's also a provision on security lighting. Basically, the light will shine for a specific area, will come on, and after 5 minutes, the light has to turn off. There's a color limitation. The correlated color temperature, or CCT, that was at 3,000 kelvins. And then finally, publicly owned lighting, the lighting that the city puts up or the school district or anyone has to comply with these same basic standards. And that would also apply to street lights as well. There's a provision on signage that there's a limit in terms of the square footage that signage can be lighted. There are prohibitions, lasers, searchlights, upward pointing lights, flashing blinking lights, external neon lights are prohibited. I'm not sure how you feel about neon. Used to be very popular. I think it's becoming less so. And I think there's also the possibility of neon with a variety of colors just not kind of working well. Obviously, you are exempt if you're lighting a US flag and also for emergency situations. The thing on neon, again, is just limited to the trim of the building. So we're not looking at large neon signs or flashing neon signs. There are exemptions. For example, existing lights that don't conform may continue. There's also a provision on string lights. I put that in there because it may or may not be an issue to the city. I don't think it will be. You just want to consider whether that's really necessary. That might be, again, just like the previous one on maximum brightness. It might be a little bit of overkill to put that in there. Decorative lighting and lighting for special events is obviously exempt, as is lighting a US flag, lighting of athletic fields, and there are some limitations. So while the game is on, the lights are on. But if there's field maintenance to be done where they don't need all the lighting, then the lighting can be or will need to be reduced. Temporary lighting for emergencies would also be exempt. Now, getting toward the end here, existing non-conforming lighting. Outdoor fixtures are exempt but must conform, again, within 2 years of the effective date. This conformance also applies to replacing lights. And these requirements may be placed as conditions of approval. So for example, if someone came in for a development review within, let's say these pass by September and someone comes in with a development review before the 2-year time period, you can condition them that they comply with these regulations. And finally, lighting plans are required for building permits, and also things like site design review applications, conditional uses, those sort of things. They have to show a lighting plan on how that's going to be working. With that, that summarizes the material. My hope is you go through this and sort of point me in the right direction for like a final document. I would suggest see what we can get done today. And then we can return next month, hopefully, with a final document and begin the adoption process the month after. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have and take it from there.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you for all these great work you brought before us over the years. It's exciting to have a need, have you bring us these memorandums and to go through them and to work together. I'm having a great time. This is good stuff, and it's thanks to, we couldn't do it without you, obviously. So
Well,
I really appreciate your part in this whole process. Thank you.
well, I will also want to thank the city of Yamhill and the commission, if you will, for looking at dark skies. I don't think we think about it that much, but I think there's a lot to be said for having some sort of limitations on lighting. And I'll tell you, the last 2 years, I know, or 3 years, lighting has been a big issue.
I went to the city council meeting and just told them what we were up to. And I said to them, we didn't see a purpose of all the different cities we didn't like, whether it was, being able to see the stars or taking care of the animals and, that nature. And I told him, I looked down at Lynn, I said, sounds like we're a bunch of tree huggers here. And he said, yeah, on this. So they were kind of nodding in agreement with all these purposes. So that was just an initial, yeah, they like it. Well, a number of these things are covered later on but let's just take them up, the ones that we flagged here in the beginning. Even though they come up later, we'll just do them now. So in case I didn't make double notes, and you as well. The first thing I have is the 180 to 2 years. You recommended 2 years. As we sat here last time, I think I started the discussion at 2 years and we just kept ratcheting it down and Jaden was kind of like, no, 180 days. And we all kind of went, okay. And
We're such a small town,
yeah, where did we? I think we were more on the 180 days end than the 2 years. I'm seeing nods.
That's what I recall.
And that's fine from my perspective. I've just seen stuff. I mean, I'm looking at my notes from the meeting and there was 180, 180. Then I crossed things off and it was 2 years, 2 years. And then I put another note that said 180. So that's why I'm saying there, you certainly have a range. I think the most important thing is not the duration of when the exempt lights need to come into conformance, but having that date certain when the clock starts. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Well, you're thinking we're gonna wrap this up by September.
I'm thinking it could get to the council by September.
So if we added 180 days to that, is that something?
Well, pick a date I think would be easier so everyone is sharing the same date. So you can pick October 1, November 1. In fact, it may be easier, assuming council adoption, et cetera, 30-day wait and the whole bit, maybe January 1, 2025, that's when the clock starts ticking. That might be simpler.
for 6 months, and that would make it July 1st.
July 1, correct.
Yeah, and that really is probably gonna give people 9 months from the time we approve it.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit extra, just to make sure we don't, in case we go out a little longer approval process.
Okay,
Okay, all right, that's great.
Well, I just bought my first one. And they're not prohibitive. Even if they're more decorative, they're still not, they're not prohibitive.
What did you buy?
I bought this one, where did I end up getting this one?
A what?
It's for my shop. And so I have the big sodium lights, I
Oh, yeah.
have 2 of them,
Uh-huh.
and one of them, it just happened to go out. And I've had to replace that bulb 2 or 3 times in the last 3 or 4 years. The other one never seems to. But that one has gone out now, and I don't like having a dark driveway.
So you got a new one, is it an LED and it just points down and it's fine?
It's not installed yet, I just got it, but I'm just saying cost wise.
Mhm.
I think with the bulb and everything, it was like 120 or something like that.
All right.
And so I don't think that it's gonna be prohibitive for people to have to deal with this.
Any more questions on page 1 for Walt right now? Hearing none, we go to page 2. We've already talked about that one applicability. And I would just say, fully shielded, if people wanted to keep a porch light where the light's going across the street, well, they could put some aluminum foil inside the glass and make sure it's just hitting their property and down onto the porch. Would that be a viable solution?
well, it probably would be. Understand this is not. We're not judging aesthetics on the lights. We're just asking that the light shine downward. And also focus on the area that needs the lighting. And that's really what we're after. So it's kind of interesting. The first comment had to do with the neighbors saying you got a real bright light. If they wanted to shield it in some way so it's just pointing down or concentrating on, say, the front porch as opposed to the entire front yard, that would be fine. That would be fine. We're not saying they have to change everything, rip everything out and putting in new material. As long as the light effectively meets the requirement, that's the only thing we're after.
The only thing with that, just my honest opinion, and I'm not trying to put any on anything, it'd be really easy to put some foil in there. And then as soon as your inspection's over, it could go away.
Oh, you're worried about, well, no, it'd be let's bring up that point. How is this enforced? Well, we're kind of jumping to the end here. And Angie asked this before the meeting started. Is this by complaint? Is it?
Yes. Yes, violations with the Title 10 are enforced through the complaint process. Someone makes a complaint, the city follows up. I've never worked with a city that had active enforcement, actually driving around town looking for problems. So if someone goes to the city, yes, you can see where that would go. So someone says, hey, the light's shining in my window and it's not directed down or whatever, the city would follow up.
Can I make a comment in regards to that light? The situation with us is Bob's house is directly across from us. He has a big picture window. The light we put up does not shine anywhere except for on our porch. It doesn't go into our front yard. It's just that
You can see it.
the way our houses are situated, they're directly across from each other, and our front door is directly in line with his picture, and it's a picture window, a big
Well, Patty, I
picture
think
window.
you just don't, if the light's hitting his window, the light is trespassing, it's off your property, it's not directed onto your property,
Well,
so.
it is though. I mean, it's right on our porch. I mean, light, if
If
you
you
look
can
at
see
a
the bare
light.
bulb, if you can, now just, this is it. If you can see the bare bulb, the light is trespassing.
No, you can't see the bulb because the glass is. It's a,
If you can see that something's
you can
coming
see the
through it,
light.
if something's directly, he sees the light source directly, then you gotta shield it.
So what good would that do for me to have a porch light? If it's shining down on the ground and not shining by my front door?
That's
That,
not
see,
for
this
West,
is where the problem.
we're not gonna talk
comes in.
about that right now. Okay,
But this is what the problem is, because it says it has to be directly shining down. But when, I don't know if you know where I live, but our house is dark.
when this is written,
It's
it will
dark.
be clear, it will be explained to you, and it'll be clear. But I'm not gonna go any more with you right now, okay? Thank you. Anything on page 2?
Yes, I would like to bring up the issue of maximum brightness. And if you go to page 7 of the memo, under item E2, it talks about maximum brightness. And my suggestion was to basically eliminate items A through D and clean up the section a little bit. Just simply allow, just put the limit on individual lights, not looking at entire projects. I think that would just be way beyond the scope of what we're trying to do. So my suggestion is just maximum brightness. The maximum lumens of any lamp shall not exceed 1,000 lumens, period. And just leave it at that. That way, we're just not getting into counting each and every bulb for a commercial project. It just isn't, I think that just goes a little too far down the road. But that's that was the purpose for my comment.
I'm okay with that. I saw D getting really messy, to kind of really straighten out how many bulbs, you could have.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's fine. 1,000 lumens is a 90-watt incandescent bulb, just for your.
Say that again?
1,000 lumens is a 90-watt incandescent bulb, the old-fashioned get hot bulb.
Okay.
Just so you know, because we all kind of know what a 60-watt bulb is. 90 is, you don't usually put one of those up. But
So Sue, the light that you purchased,
Mhm.
how many lumens was it?
I don't know the lumens, but it takes a 60 bulb.
Oh, a 60.
Oh, okay.
now a 60-watt bulb equivalent, or you're gonna put
it's
an
LED.
incandescent LED.
LED.
Is what I.
So it's probably a 60-watt equivalent. It might be an 8.5 watt actually.
Yeah, I think it was 13.
13, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a 60-watt equivalent,
Okay.
but.
I'm
when
just
you-
wondering how that compares to like the bank and stuff, like the lights that they have.
Yeah, because
It's
Patty's
1,000
talked about
reasonable.
the sign, doing the very same thing that Bob's talking about his.
The banks shine down
Yeah.
where they are shielded.
Yeah.
What was that?
The banks shine down, they are shielded. They're
Okay.
just bright.
So let's see, where we at?
But that, it would still be.
But that was
a-
the
a
sign that
1,000.
we're talking about, and there is signs in here.
Mhm.
No, the parking lot lights is what I was thinking of, at the bank.
Yeah.
The parking lot lights, like, do we have any idea how many lumens those are?
No,
Like what a typical parking lot lamp would be, I don't know. I'm just wondering, is 1,000 appropriate? It just,
so
For commercial.
a 90-watt bulb in equivalent of a 90-watt bulb in a parking lot lamp that points downward might be restrictive, Walt.
It could be, I don't know, I think I'm just basing it on my experience. We just basically have 60-watt bulbs, even outdoors. and all our lights are shielded. They go down and they seem to be plenty bright. We don't light up our front yard, if you will, or the backyard. We do have a light that is for the backyard, but even then it's only 60 watts. So, you know, one other thing here, if you look down under mixed use, it talks about 1,500 lumens, and you're probably looking at what, a 120?
135.
Okay,
That would be a 135 watt bulb incandescent.
that might be, 1,500 might be a little safer for everyone. Just a thought, I mean, 1,000 seemed to be reasonable, 1,500 might be a nice upper limit, just
Well,
just
Would it be-
because.
instead of breaking it all out through, you know, A, B, C, D, could we just say 1,000 lumens for residential and 1,500 for non-residential?
I think that would be great.
That would
That'd
be
be much
still pretty,
simpler.
that would be pretty simple, and
Sounds great.
I'm just envisioning like the Shell station at night. I don't know what their lights are.
Well, the parking lot light that's up on a, I don't know, 20-foot pole, and it's got a canopy and it shines down, I think it's gonna be more than 1,000 lumens. And maybe 1,500 is sufficient, maybe.
So should we speak to people like, for instance, the school, because like when you go over to the, when you go to
Right.
the first dome and you're walking over to the other one, there's lights out there. I have no clue.
Right, that's kind of what
You
I'm
know?
getting at. I don't know what's reasonable.
And they're on like a pole. And they're shining down, but we don't know how bright they are.
So I just did a quick search for parking lot light,
Yeah.
and a 150 watt LED light puts out 22,500 lumens for $180 parking lot light.
22,000, that's way above 1,500.
And that's,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
And how many watts was that?
150.
That's not 150 watts like we think of an incandescent bulb, that's 150 watts of LED, which is a heck of a lot brighter, because they're much more efficient.
Right.
So did you hear all that, Walt?
Yes, yes, indeed. I like the idea of 1,000 for res and 1,500 for non-res or mixed use type of projects. I think that's sort of a reasonable way of doing it.
I think we need some time to go ask around what some of these lights are in town.
Mhm.
Is it appropriate for us to go out and look at the school ground and scratch our heads, I guess, together or individually, but not, we can't have a quorum. So individually go out and go, boy, is this too bright or not? And then come back and talk about it and find out how many lumens it was?
Yes, absolutely, because this is a legislative action and you can gather information whenever and wherever you want to. The only thing is, again, you're right, you cannot meet as a group because that's a quorum and you have to have notice for that. So yes, if you want to walk around individually and look at properties, I think no, that's perfectly acceptable, no violation.
So another question I would have is, I'm guessing the football field lights are a lot more than that.
Well,
That's a
yeah.
different animal.
Is this limiting those?
No, they are exempt for athletic fields.
Okay, so that covers it, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw the exemption, I didn't know if it included the lumens.
yeah, but there is a provision that obviously the lights can be adjusted. And so if they're just doing ground maintenance in the evening, you don't need to have the full lights on. So they just can have enough lighting to sort of do their job. During the athletic event, yes, full lights, the whole shebang. But if it's just maintenance or something along those lines, no, the light has to be proportional, if you will, to the task at hand.
And that's in,
Yeah, I saw the exception thing, I just didn't know if it applied to the.
One of the things that I, you know, my head just starts rolling every now and then. And so when I'm looking at things like the school district, I think of them in regards to why I want a light on my shop. Because I'm by myself and I'm down in a hole. There's nobody down there. It's dark. And and I have that parking lot up in front. And you'd be amazed. I mean, I've told my neighbors that they can, you know, if they're having a family event or something like that, but you'd be amazed the use that it gets sometimes. And it's disconcerting to me as a person by myself to not be able to know. That's why I like that light out there. But think about the school and, you know, whether we like it or not, our town is growing and there is vandalism. And so having those areas lighted, what is I mean, so are we talking about that that they'll be able to keep those on at night?
Good question, Walt. What about, that's security lighting, and I think that is exempted right there
It
in
has a 5-minute.
lighting curfew. See, it's
The
job plan of 24-hour operations or provisions for security lighting.
right,
Yeah.
the whole idea for security lighting is you sort of trip the mechanism, a sensor, and that light will stay on for no more than 5 minutes. So it's not on all the time. Now, that's something to think about. I would think that there, you know, you raise a good point. I'm thinking looking at some sort of exemption for exterior lighting less than 1,500 lumens or whatever for commercial areas that would light, just say, a doorway or something like that. I'd like to go back and think about that a little bit. I'll make a note on that, but I think that's a good point. I was looking at it from the standpoint, you walk into an area, it trips the light and it goes on, as opposed to something that might be on 24/7. So that's something for the commission to think about, but I think it's certainly worth exploring.
I want to put your question off, Sue. There's more detail about lights going off, you know, with motion sensors and things in the body. So let's take your question about your specific case when we get to that and see if the language is good or bad for you, okay?
Yeah.
For that situation.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Okay.
thinking that there's other people besides me.
We'll come back to
Yeah.
that. It's more in depth farther in. All right, on page 2, let's see. I have a question. Go ahead.
What are you calling page 2?
Oh, I'm calling page 2 of the whole, the 1, 2. We're only on the second page of the whole thing,
Oh,
of the discussion. Page 2 at the bottom. All these are, this page 2 is,
you're reading the
this
memorandum.
page number at the bottom is consistent,
Okay.
even though we get into the, all right, you with me?
Yep.
Applicability is at the top.
Yep.
Okay. My question is about existing permits. For example, the gas station here, they haven't submitted a lighting plan. And even though they have a permit, we haven't approved a lighting plan. The lighting plan would need to conform to whatever ordinances are in place at the time they submit the plan, correct?
Correct. So at this point, the decision was made and they have to conform with that decision. But if what they improve upon does not comply with this code at some point in the future, 180 days, 2 years, whatever decision, they would have to retrofit and conform.
So it's not necessarily a race to make sure we get this done before they submit their plan, because we'll say to them, you know, this does say they bring it in tomorrow. Yeah, it complies with what we have now, but middle of next year, it won't. So you're
That-
probably better off noticing that.
And that is a good point, and that's entirely up to them. Again, the actual planning decision will hold until there's other rules or regulations that might change it.
Okay. Now, we, um, it may be here, in farther, it says, applicability. This chapter will apply to all existing conforming lighting. It also, I guess it's in the body, it spells out permitted signs will also need to comply. So even though a sign was permitted in the past, if it doesn't meet this requirements.
Right, and that has to do with the lighting of the sign. That's all. It doesn't have to do with changing square footage or anything. It just has to do with the lighting relative to the sign.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the fire department sign, which has light trespass. And it was permitted.
Right?
What we're saying here, they've got till July 1st to stop light trespass.
Well, and the new sign that we just approved for the high school.
Okay,
That-
she just brought up the sign for the high school. The high school dims according to ambient lighting, which that sign cannot do.
Mhm.
It only has one brightness. So it's not gonna be coming in people's windows like, oh my gosh, okay? But, and also it dims and it also has a curfew. So that sign does not dim and it does not, I'm not sure if they turn it out at 10 o'clock, I don't know. But anyway, whether they do or not, they would need to after July 1st, correct?
Correct.
You missed it.
I
Okay,
kind of sensed it.
thank you.
Ken, you are having too much fun.
Yeah, yeah.
I have another question on this, on the prohibition about neon lighting limited to trim. What does that do for? I know that right now that they're just doing it at Christmas. But if a business was wanting to do the clear lights to light the trim of the building, like they do at Christmas time, but there's a lot of people that do that.
Now, I think
Permanent.
what he's talking here about is the actual technology of a neon light. It's
Neon,
glass
yeah.
tubes and it has neon lighting in it. And it's not the kind of thing that you put up and take down.
Like a 50s diner.
So
Right.
string lights, these new lights that look like neon, those are not prohibited,
No, I'm talking about the kinds that are actual bulbs, because they're
okay?
doing that a lot.
String lights.
Yes.
So you're saying there's a electrical cord and then there's a bulb. And there's an
Yes.
electrical cord and
Like
then
you
there's a
see
bulb.
people doing on their fence, but a
Yeah,
lot of people do it on the outside of their buildings as well.
right. So, you drive through Sisters, for example, it seems like all those old town western buildings have string lights all the way around their outline. Is that something we can do, Walt?
well, this is something that I sort of raised in my presentation. I think maybe the provision on page 9 under H2, it talks about string lights with standards. I'm thinking that might just be a little overkill. If you want to border your fence with string lights, fine. If you want to put them up just for holidays, fine. If you have a business and want to run them around your window, or you have outdoor seating and you want to put it up, I think I'm suggesting that you may want to consider eliminating item 2, other than simply saying string lights are allowed or something. But I don't think we need to get into that level of detail for string lights at this point. Just a thought.
But the problem is that they are not shielded.
No, but basically your string light is a small, tiny bulb. And even when you put them all together, I've never felt that there was a lot of glare or light trespass from a small, a string of lights. That's not quite like having the big light shining down on something. Just a thought, again, it was something that I put in there, and when I thought about it, when I put the memo together, it was like, maybe you want to go ahead and just see whether or not that's really asking too much or too many requirements for the lights.
It's getting tricky in my mind, Walt, to have a clear ordinance, because if
Mm-hmm.
the pizza place across, what's it called now?
Larson,
Larson House put string lights, they'd be pointing right at me through this window if they put it on the outline of their roof. And I think it could be considered pretty and festive and be all right with me. But now we're saying though that if somebody has a 90-watt bulb and it's coming at me, and then I could complain, excuse me. I would like that 90-watt bulb to be regulated, because that's gonna really be irritating. So how do we tell the difference between a 25-watt bulb and a 90-watt bulb from across the street? How do we regulate that?
Well, the thing is that if you're looking at the pizza place across the street and it's a commercial business, the lights go off when it's not open.
well, and just as a, for instance, just think about it too, just because we're trying to grow and we're trying to, anyway, go to Carlton.
Yeah.
And they have those, C&D does the lights that are, you can program them to be green for St. Patty's Day and pink or red for Valentine's Day, and red, white, and blue for 4th of July. And they're wrapped around the trees and they're in the trees and they're, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, let's just get back to what would be a nuisance. Those sound great, but when do they become a nuisance? So, well, yes, they go off when the business closes at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. In the winter though, it's been dark for 6 hours. And something there that is supposed to go off at 10 is still shining in my room from 6 to 10. Is that something that we're gonna regulate on?
Well, there are some seasonal impacts. Obviously, in the wintertime, it gets darker sooner. But in the summertime, it could still be fairly light out at 9:30. If they're closing at 10, it's probably not going to be that much of an issue. I think there's a balance here. I wish we could, put rules and regulations for 100% of all potential possibilities, but that may not be the case. I think ultimately, I'm thinking that the issue really is you don't want the business, if they're not operating 24/7, to make sure the lights are off at night. So you don't have that, glare, so to speak. So, tough one. I think the easiest way to control that would be through when the business is done, they shut off the lights.
Okay, I see that we're not gonna be able to regulate everything. However, we've said that lights need to be shielded so that light doesn't leave the property. And a string light is not shielded, so I don't know how we can allow string lights and say lights must be cast down and remain on the property.
Well, if under section H, these are exemptions. So in other words, it says these are exempt from the regulations of shielding and downward lighting. For the same reason that section includes lighting the US flag, where lights are required as part of, say, ODOT or some other government authority, the exemption for the athletic fields. So string lights would be exempt. Maybe just leave the regulations in there, but just note that not exceed 50 lumens. So we're looking at, okay, excuse the pun, but these are dim bulbs.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. I think if we limit the lumens on it. What do you got?
So I'm a little concerned with the 50 limit a little bit. So the bistro style kind of Edison bulb,
Yeah.
string lights.
Very cool.
We have some
Yeah.
in our backyard there, and so I was curious, I wonder what those are.
Yeah.
They're 150.
Lumens.
Each individual bulb is 150. That's what they look like.
We do have
Yeah.
business that has
common.
string lights on all the time at night too, the Berkshire Hathaway building. So if you guys at night wanna look at that one and maybe see.
Yeah,
how-
where's the camera for, I mean, so those ones that are, you get them for $50 on, we've got them on Amazon.
Yeah,
how
this
much
is,
is it?
I don't know.
They're all over the place.
Yeah,
And they're those little Edison bulbs, those are 150 lumens, so I think that's a great number. To
Okay.
limit string lighting to,
cause that's kind of,
Okay.
it's become a popular backyard lighting thing now.
and they're not objectionable,
Yeah.
okay. In my mind.
Okay, I can, then my comment would be keep in the string light, but change the lumens to 150, and I think that
Yes.
kind of covers it. Yeah, I just want to make sure you understand that if it's part of a commercial business and they shut down at 9, the lights are off.
With you, I'm with you.
Real quick, does the curfew apply to residential as well?
No, this is for businesses.
Okay. So like I have our backyard lights are on a timer or actually it's on Alexa. But so they shut off at 11 automatically when we go to bed. But I didn't know if that was necessary or something.
No, it just applies to businesses. So if they're open 24/7, they can have the lights on 24/7. It also grants flexibility that the lights can go on an hour before opening and don't have to be turned off until an hour after closing. Although I suspect that if it's closing time, you want to turn the lights off outside. So you don't have people walking in while you're trying to clean the floors.
Well, I'd like to comment on that, maybe the 1 hour for the purpose of closing. But if there's someone present, it doesn't just give a blanket hour on each end of their business hours to keep the lights on. If the purpose is to help people be closing up, maybe the phrase if someone is, when someone is present.
Well,
Because it'll be harder to track.
Yeah, it really.
yeah, I think that would be the issue. Also, let's say the manager is going to be standing there and late at night doing the books. I'm not sure that's really what you're after. I'm
Okay.
thinking, also bear in mind that these will really, you want to keep the light on in the kitchen or the back office. These rules don't apply to that. We're looking at the exterior lighting. That's where the impact for the sky comes in. And it's.
I'm just thinking of the guy across the street from the Shell station. These lights having to go off when the business is off is gonna be really nice for him. And if the guy could choose to say, okay, I can keep him on an hour after business is closed. I don't want that for that guy on the corner. That's just where I'm coming from.
Well, I would hate to say if there's someone in the building, you could keep the lights on. I
Well, it's not a
think,
good idea. I wanted
No.
something that just doesn't give him a blanket extra hour.
okay, well, probably the easiest way to do it then I think some flexibility might be called for. Just call it maybe a half an hour.
Okay,
Okay, I mean,
think of that too.
let me throw that out. It's just that I'm looking at a little flexibility here because someone may be in the parking lot wrapping up their purchase. And, there is a little bit of a safety issue for that sort of individual. I think, 30 minutes is probably fine. I can't
Great.
imagine keeping the lights on 1 extra hour. So 30 minutes would be fine.
Sound good?
Okay, and I will make that change.
Down on F, signage, 200 square feet, that's 10 by 20. That is one big sign on the side of a building that you can light up. It just seemed big to me.
Well, this simply says the total square footage that can be lighted. So you may have 2 or 3 signs that total, say, 200 square feet or 250 square feet based on our code, but no more than 200 square feet can be lighted. So that's the way I was looking at it, just simply saying, you know, you can't light everything. Or there's a upper limit to 200 square feet. We could drop that if you think 200 square feet's a little bit much.
Is
Maybe,
that one side or two sides? Does it count, both sides count? Like, for instance, on this, just talking about the fire sign. It's 4x8.
Say that was not a light emitting sign, say that was just a sign that lights were shining on, that's what this is about, lights are
right,
shining on a
exactly.
sign. So just say that was a sign with lights shining on it for her argument of a two-sided sign.
Correct. And that's exactly what this covers. We have a variety of ways of looking at sign square footage. Two-sided signs are also covered with that. We're just saying however you calculate the square footage, no more than 200 square feet of that may be lighted.
So what
So,
I'm saying
both
is
sides will be included.
that's 64 square feet.
That's a sign that emits light. This is for shining lights onto a sign that does not have
Yeah.
LED, so it's a different animal in what we're talking
Right.
about.
exactly. In fact, that's a good distinction. The other ones we regulate at night in terms of turning the intensity down or turning them off. And this would say, for example, if you have a spotlight on a sign, no more than 200 square feet of your signage may be lit. You cannot have those lights. And again, you can't do an uplighting, so it would have to be a downlight.
The 10 by 20 is kind of the surface area of, you know, this whole wall right here. That is a big sign.
Humongous amount of footage.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just
That's what I'm
think
trying to
that's
say.
like 4 times too big. I'm thinking 50 square feet, like a quarter of that wall there.
Okay, so we could, one other thing to do, because at that point you get into a situation where a small business might be able to have 50 square feet of signage and a larger business 150, but the smaller business gets everything lit, where the larger business has to make a choice what sign is going to be lit.
Yeah.
Maybe we do it a percentage.
Of the outside of their building or their surfaces.
The percentage of allowable signage not to exceed an upper limit.
You're the professional. That sounds great. That's a good way to.
Okay, I'm gonna have to put a little thought into that one in terms of an equitable way of handling that, but that might be one way of doing it. So, okay, let me make a note on that. Signage, okay. Percentage. Okay, good to go.
All right, I'm just curious in general, would, this is regulating outdoor lighting.
Yes.
Should we include outdoor lighting includes light emanating from a window from indoors?
I think that would probably be a bridge too far, so to speak. I think focus on where you have reasonable control. I think one thing I mentioned last month, don't establish rules that you may not want to enforce or are difficult to enforce. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's that might be going a little bit too far. I think focus on what, the 95th percentile of making the changes, and the few oddball situations will simply be out there. Again, you're not going to cover everything 100%. So focus on the exterior lighting. That would be my thought.
Okay, I was kind of thinking of businesses using neon lights inside, blinking, flashing lights, those things that are prohibited. But just because they're behind the glass, they could still be affecting the outdoors intentionally. Like a sign just an eighth of an inch, farther on the other side of the glass.
Yeah,
Off when they
I know what you're getting at. It's like, bear in mind, you have a thing on signage, window signs don't count. And I know when I was starting to enforce the Kaiser sign code, they did not have that provision. Every sign was counted. Then I went to a business and I sat there and I looked at it, and the front door was plastered with MasterCard, Visa, bank, this, that, and the other thing. So I'm going, do you want to count each and every little sticker on the window? And the answer was, that's just, you go nuts. And so they changed the code to say signs in the window do not count. And so again, some folks, what grocery store might put signs in the window advertising specials. And that's just probably nature of the business. I think again, we're looking at the permanent outdoor signage and also the permanent outdoor lighting.
Seems like what you were talking about, Walt, was maybe T&E paints a poster and sticks it on the inside of the window, asparagus, so much a pound. I'm talking about an open sign that is stroboscopic coming through the glass.
I think those are prohibited, period. Flashing signs, I think, I would have to look at the sign code a little bit more. I could come back next month with like some commentary on that, but window strobe lights, I think those are prohibited.
Or any,
But
or
let me verify that.
not necessarily even strobing, but just a lighted sign.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks, Walt.
you know,
I guess that means reminding us what we already have in our sign code, I guess, and how it applies here.
well, one other thing to look at, maybe, let's see what we have in signage, and maybe we want to add something here that flashing, moving lights on the inside would be prohibited. I don't know if we want to go down that path, but let me look at what we have with the code first, okay?
Yeah, I just think now's the time to bring it up, and if we decide no, then we decide no, but at least we've thought about it.
Concur.
Okay, oh,
Prohibited, strobe lights are prohibited.
They are.
page 3, did I miss, what was that, Angie?
Strobe lights are prohibited.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Existing
Angie.
conforming, how affect permits. Okay, I'm ready to go into page 4. Did you want to talk us through this, Walt, or should we just ask questions that we have?
I think if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Maybe focus on the areas that you have some concerns with. And again, I have some notes here, for example, establishing the effective date, looking at changing on some things with string lights and whatnot, and the curfew provisions. And I could always go back and make these changes for next month. So I'd be happy, as I said, to answer any questions or discuss issues you may have.
All right, anything on page 4? I've got a question about the sign, this title of this, Dark Skies Lighting Standards. Dark skies is just one of our purposes. And we're kind of calling it that. Can we call it outdoor lighting standards instead of dark skies lighting standards?
No problem. I'll make the change.
It just sounds a little bit, doesn't sound that, how do I say this? This dark skies thing is kind of a new thing, and it's also doesn't really talk about nuisance. I think nuisance is driving this as much, I mean, it's just one purpose in the title. I think we should
Got it.
not just pinpoint one.
Could I
Got it.
make a suggestion?
Sure.
Make it say both/both. And the reason I'm saying that is because it is new, who knows? Maybe Uncle's gonna come up with some kind of a, $2,500 grant to small cities that comply with the dark sky. And wham, we've already got it done, and we might be able to just apply for that grant and help our city. I'm just saying, because it's a new thing, and it's
Dark skies is kind of a buzzword.
it is a buzzword right
Yeah.
now.
Well, what I could do is throw the term into the purpose statement. So at least we touch base with that. I think we have it, minimize glare, light trespass, light pollution and sky glow. And I could add something with that, just so we use the terminology, someplace.
That's-
But I think outdoor might be a little bit more inclusive, if you will, or focuses on the purpose.
And we'll have dark skies in the preamble about our purpose. So is that all right?
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah, good
thinking
point.
we should keep it.
Yeah, buzzword, definitely. Okay, reflective surfaces in number B3. This would include like, I don't know, that's gonna cover somebody could have a bulb that was shielded from direct view, but whatever the light was bouncing off of could become could spill off the property, so to speak. So is that the way why that's written that way?
Well, partially. Also understand these are just guiding principles. These are not requirements or decision criteria. They just sort of provide, the purpose statement, here's what we're doing, and here are the principles that we looked at to basically guide us to put the purpose statement and the regulations together. So I think it's important to note that item B supports item A, and that's basically the sole intent. The details begin with C and go all the way through the rest of the code.
Do we talk about the effect of reflective surfaces later on?
Well, no, we don't. I think it just comes down to the shielding, and also avoiding light trespass and a few other things.
I guess my point is, say you're shielding, but right behind it, you have a very white wall, and that wall is really is actually just basically reflecting that shielded light, that no one can see the actual source, but they can see a very white wall that is causing light to trespass.
Well, actually, if you look at the sentence, it part of what they're trying to do here is lights should be no brighter than necessary, using the lowest light level possible. If you don't need the 120 watt bulb and a 60 would work, but they're saying when you're putting the lighting plan together, consider reflective surfaces. That's more of an advisory statement. Okay, there's the language is telling the reader, consider reflective surfaces when you put together your lighting plan. And that's sort of how that works out. We could probably drop that sentence because all the other regulations take over, but that's something to consider. I don't think it has any harm. I think it just simply puts people on notice, if you will. But we can drop it, I think, without ill effect.
I'm looking down at light trespass. Light trespass does not include indirect reflection or scattering of light from mounting hardware or any other surfaces, including a white wall. So we're discouraging it, but we're not regulating against it. We're excluding it.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom of page 5.
Right.
Okay. And because if we start trying to talk about it, it's going to be really hard to.
I have a brick wall with a light. I then paint it white for whatever reason. It just going down a slope here, it gets a little slippery. I think just let people know that, think about it when you put the lighting plan together. And I'm not sure we want to go as far as looking at paint schemes, so to speak. Just, yeah, this is pretty progressive, and I think that's great. I'm not sure you want to go to paint schemes.
Okay. Well, I thought this is the time to ask the questions.
That is correct.
The 90 degrees, that's interesting. Somebody standing across the street is gonna, well, you still can't let it spill off the property. Okay, so 90 degrees is fine, and trying to say 80 degrees. If it's going off the property, then it's a problem.
'Cause you
Correct.
also-
The other thing too is like that may not be a factor, depending on the height and location of the light.
Yeah,
So,
80 degrees wouldn't cut it either.
And distance,
Sean?
the further the
Right.
light is from you, it's gonna dissipate.
Yeah.
So if you're 100 yards from the light, it's gonna look a lot different than if you're 10 yards, right?
Yeah,
So
but
that
this-
90 degree may not be an issue.
It looks a lot it looks a lot different. Who's to say whether it's in violation or not? That's my problem.
Yeah.
My new light is this type of thing.
But then again.
It's this, you know. So it doesn't do this, but I noticed when you drive down, look at the streetlights and whatnot, they're basically, even though they're not like that, they're pretty much like that. They, you know, they're flat.
Yeah. Okay, just a typo at the end of light trespass. At the bottom of page 5, directly by a light that shines, there's an S there. That might be missing. The condition in which light emanated directly by a
Oh,
light
by light
fixture
fixture.
shines, add an S to
Shines.
shine.
You know, interesting, my edit function dropped the S. I do recall that one particular word. It makes more sense with shine, so
If it said,
I'm very good.
if it said lights emitted, then light would need to be plural, a condition on which light,
Or light fixtures would be plural.
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
okay, I got it covered.
Yeah, I hear your editor did it. Low lumen describes a fixture does not exceed 300 lumens. Okay, definition. And I can look up what a stereodyne is. My phone died and I couldn't do it before the meeting. All right, I'm on to page 7. Any questions on 6? Okay. Yeah, 135 watts, we talked about.
Okay, yeah, I do on the seasonal
Great.
lighting, because we gave specific dates for Christmas, November 1 through February. What was it,
50.
15.
And which section are you in right now?
Seasonal
Seasonal, you're on
lighting.
page 6. Okay,
Yeah.
back to page 6.
So when we're talking about the fact that a lot of people really get into Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's unregulated farther on, Sue.
so we're just, we'll regulate Christmas, but the rest of them can. I mean, we can just-
Exemptions, decorative lighting, holiday lighting shall be allowed for no more than the period between November 1st and November 15th, provided the lighting does not create glare on adjacent streets. And who's gonna determine glare on adjacent streets? I don't know, but that's what it says here, or adjacent nearby properties. So they're pretty much excluded
During those dates.
during those dates.
But what she's saying is people get into Halloween. And what if they do it outside those dates?
November 1st. So you wanna back it up?
No, I'm just saying that, you know, and here again, we're talking about Carlton and the string lights that do the trees and whatnot, and we do those continuous, basically.
Well, those we've handled to 150 lumens, which we
Yeah,
kind
so
of
we're
determined
okay with
is
that.
somewhat benign.
But is the seasonal lighting? Is that?
You know,
I'm just.
you raised a good,
Somebody
no,
come back and throw it back at us.
you raise a real good point. You raise a good point. I think you're right. Around Halloween here, certainly folks throw all sorts of stuff. Instead of November 1, why don't we call it October 1? I think by holiday, we normally think Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. But I think, why don't we just call it October 1?
We've got more than a third of the year.
And instead of February 15th, call it Feb 1 at the end.
February 1st, okay, so we've got October, November, December, January, we've got 4 months, that's a third of the year.
Yeah,
Well, I'm just saying that
Yep.
I think it's a really popular thing.
You did it.
I don't do it. but-
No, I know, but you got it taken care of. Thank you.
okay. I will make that change.
Anything else on page 6? Page 7.
Again, under maximum brightness, just to clarify, 1,000 for residential, 1,500 for non-residential, and just sort of keep it simple like that. And that's under E2.
Yes.
Okay,
That's what we talked about earlier.
right.
Great. I think we did a good job there. Down in B, 3B,
Mhm.
the site, I'm at about the second sentence. The site plan shall designate areas considered display sales. I think it's not clear that those are two separate areas. So I just wanted to throw in a few words to clarify that.
Okay,
So the site plan shall designate areas considered display sales areas. Go ahead.
What about saying consider display, comma, sales or end parking areas? Seems like we're actually listing 3 different things there.
actually, the display and sales are basically one thing. You're
That's right.
displaying
Okay.
something, you're having a sale there. We want to separate that from the parking
The parking, that's right.
material, and that's why, but I will clean that sentence up a bit, okay?
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, that's it for 7, 8. Anybody? I've got some outline. I think 4 at the top of the page there on page 8 is really, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, parking light. Okay, that should become 3C. It should still be under non-residential requirements. And 5 as well should become 3D.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
no problem. That works out real well.
And then I think 8 is also under non-residential, so 8 should become 3E.
Well, I think security lighting could also be added to that mix.
Except there are
Well,
residential.
Is that, we've got residential under security though, so you see down in I
Okay,
three eyes. That's why I didn't put it under non-residential.
Oh, wait.
okay, residential, okay, got it. Okay, I will kind of clump the commercial material together under one heading.
Is the school district considered publicly owned?
Yep,
Okay, thank you. And there again, we have the 200 square feet. This is where it actually is. You're gonna look at making a percentage there.
right, I will play with it a little bit, either maximum limit or in some manner, let me look at the sign code again.
Okay, anything else on page 8? Going to page 9,
On G5,
G, oh, G, H, oh, back on page 8.
page eight,
Yes.
bottom.
Oh,
Says,
so at the top.
well, again, yours is
The
printed.
top of
Your
9.
numbers are different.
Oh, how
The one that got
awful.
handed off here. So anyway,
Sorry.
externally affixed neon lighting. So back to the question of the windows. There's neon lighting affixed inside of a window. I don't know if there's a way to modify that to include the windows.
Actually, it talks about external neon lighting.
Right, I just didn't know if it would address Ken's question about in windows, if we could change that.
Well, I had a little note here to go through kind of window lighting.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
so that's something, I will add a note to this one.
Why are we singling out neon when it's hard to tell some of these light tubes from, these rope lights
yeah,
from neon? Why are we saying no neon?
Actually, neon specifically uses gas within a sealed container and
Yes.
then electrical charge.
Yeah.
And so you can do a lot of interesting things with neon. I think this might be in sort of going into the aesthetic considerations. It may not have a direct relationship to the desired, the background of the dark sky, so to speak. So I think it's kind of a reasonable request, but it's not something that I think is really essential to the goal of a sort of dark sky type of ordinance. But again, if you're giving it the title outdoor lighting, the question is, do you want to have exterior neon lighting?
My point is that these rope lights are hard to differentiate from neon. So we can get the same effect without it. So if we can put up a rope light and boy, that looks like a neon sign, doesn't it? Yeah, it sure does. I can't tell the difference. Why exclude neon if we're allowing something that looks pretty much exactly like it?
Okay, let me look at that a little bit more. Maybe I can differentiate or come back with some alternatives for the commission to consider. Would that be fair?
Sure.
Okay. Alternatives.
Anything else on roughly page 9? Okay, that's, temporary lighting. I was down in 8 on,
Yeah,
I was thinking construction sites. Should we put a number of days, like 5 days? Theatrical might be up for rehearsal in a couple days. Television's up and gone. Performance areas, construction sites was the one that I thought, well, that might want to be around for a while. People like to light their construction sites really well because it's really, prone to theft.
right.
actually, I don't see a 5-minute or 5-day restriction on that part.
No, I just was suggesting that.
Oh,
And I don't know that a 5-day restriction, I guess I just want to think about construction sites.
Okay,
As different animals. How do we protect it's a security lighting, so it can be on 24 hours. We don't want light trespass. So maybe we don't exempt construction because they can comply and still take care of themselves. But sometimes there's these intense lights and, people are doing emergency repairs at 2 a.m. and man, you drive by and you can hardly see.
well,
Is that the kind of thought you had for construction lights?
that would be covered under emergency conditions,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
item 9. So I mean, if
Right.
there's a water main breaks and they have to be out there working at 2 a.m. to fix it, and there's equipment, it's like, that's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Right, that was a bad example. So let's just go
Okay.
back to a construction site.
In construction site, I think the other things, I think you've provided some food for thought with the idea of, it has to be directed to the specific area.
Maybe I'm just saying, don't
Trespass, yeah, let me.
put it under temporary lighting, just leave it. A construction site is just like anything else. They can have it on 24 hours because it's a security light, but we still
Right.
don't want trespass, so they don't need a special mention in temporary lighting.
Okay. It wouldn't hurt just to make that note for construction lighting.
It's under exemptions. I didn't want to exempt things we don't need to exempt, I guess.
Okay, but we can place it elsewhere within the code, just say for construction projects, 24 lighting is acceptable, provided, and then kind of a list of requirements. That might be one way of doing it.
Yeah, it kind of would get its direction from the security lighting section. So
Mhm.
maybe when you go to look at that, see what the security lighting, if it could go in there.
Okay, will do.
All right. That's it for 9 for me. On to page 10. I got my big one answered on page 10. The fire sign is ours. That's it. I'm done.
So this, this doesn't really apply to the regulation per se, but do we need, who's responsible for a communication plan to people? It seems like we need to make sure to communicate this. If there's a 6-month duration of compliance, we need to communicate it to the residents in some fashion. I don't know if it's your water bill or because we give a newsletter in the water bill, don't we?
Well, we could utilize the fire sign.
How are these things usually rolled out? We want a well-informed public.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things you can do. Obviously, the city has a website, which is one option. The other thing too is that, and this is one of the reasons I think I thought about putting on 2 years as opposed to 180 days, is that it takes a little while for the information to filter through. Not everyone will get it the first time round, or they heard something at City Hall that there's new rules concerning lighting. And so that's why I was thinking like maybe instead of 2 years, like within a year, that gives enough time for people to absorb the information, looking at options, and then sort of budget for whatever changes need to be made. That was just one of my reasons for maybe going beyond the 180 days. So it will be incumbent upon the city to make sure this information is out there. I think the last thing we need to do is have people who are aware calling the city about violations, and it's impacting people who were not aware. And so I think that's going to be very critical that this information gets out there. That's something I might be able to work with the interim and also Angie, I would assume, to look at ways of doing that.
It seems like a frequently asked questions thing might be useful, because I could see, nobody's gonna read this.
Yeah.
Code.
Wow.
Anyway,
What's that?
what's already there in municipal code, people don't know.
Right. So
Right.
It's out there,
how does this impact
it's
you
out there on the.
as a
website.
resident kind of thing? And
Is it the kind of thing that we could put on the website? Now, there's a percentage of people that don't ever visit the website, but if it was like an alert on the face of the website, and maybe an alert in the water bill, and possibly here again,
I
using
think there's a couple
the
channels.
fire sign
There's
and
Pam's Facebook, the community page.
Pam Kirsch, yes,
Kirsch's Facebook
absolutely.
page. There's city council meeting, there's water bill. I mean, I just think we need to have somebody, I don't know if it's us necessarily, but a plan.
When the ordinances, when we're having the hearings for the ordinances, those get posted all over town, on the website, on the Facebook, at the reader board. So all these ordinances as they're, or everything is is it
There,
an ordinance that you're doing right now? I don't know if I'm using the right word, but all of these things as they're happening, the word gets out there.
Jaden?
Would it be a good idea to possibly do a different time frame for commercial and residential?
Commercial, shorter time than residential.
Yeah, because then that gives the residential more time to
filter it out.
exactly
It's a
and
bigger group.
How about,
comply to it.
I think that's a little confusing. How about we do September first. So we think we're gonna have this wrapped up by September first. Let's just say a year from September first, rather than a year from the January mark. So we're bumping it out from July to September. And then also, yeah, nobody's gonna read the code, but how about a cheat sheet? What does this mean to you?
I like that.
And
What made me think of it is I was walking, I think after the last meeting, I was walking back home by the high school in the very last house on, I don't know what road that is. The one that goes by all the fields,
one that goes by what?
the fields, and then there's a little bridge over to the new neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, there's a house over there and they've got this bright light. It's probably like what you're having in your parking lot. And it's at the end of that road, so it's like a dead end street. But it's like, they don't look like somebody that would probably care to know what the regulations are. And I'd hate for somebody to call them in and then they say, I never knew this.
Mhm.
So you're thinking that this light is probably in violation of this?
I'm guessing.
You're guessing.
anyway. Yeah,
Now it's gonna go by complaint.
right. So I just don't want somebody like that to be so blindsided.
Right.
So
How about somebody does walk around and say, this light looks like it's not in code, and these are the new regulations. You might want to take a look at this, because there could be a complaint. I'm not an enforcement person, but if you got a complaint that looks like this would be in violation. That's probably asking for trouble, but I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, someone's gonna have to walk the streets at night, so to speak.
Yes, yeah.
And I like the idea of putting a fact sheet together.
Okay,
In other words, I have a resident, how does this affect my home? Little things like that. And some sort of examples like, these bulbs can be, your bulb coming out of Home Depot at 15 watt LED is only so many lumens, so don't worry about it. Just try to keep it going down. So, things like that can be helpful. And I also noted in my staff memo that I'm still looking for diagrams, examples to help out. And that could tie into a fact sheet as well, saying, here's examples, for example, Dundee, here's examples of various lights that would just be perfectly acceptable. So no one thinks that there's only one style that we're after. There are certainly options out there.
so would that be something you would do for us, is bring us a fact sheet suggestion?
I could give it a shot and work with Angie on that. So yeah, I wouldn't mind cutting a draft of that. Let's see how this goes through the council and
Yeah. Guess we're
and
getting ahead of
giving
ourselves.
ourselves about a year from September 1 to September 1, a fact sheet can easily be put together in that time frame.
So it looks like we've convinced us, you at least have convinced Jaden and me to move from January to July from September to September
September.
will be our compliance date. Is everybody all right with that? Okay. What else on this? Are we done?
I think so. I have taken probably better notes this time, and I will be back next month with revisions, and the memo will identify the changes. Also, if it looks like we're pretty good, what I may do is send the info off to DLCD and establish a hearing for July. And in that way, we can still make changes come the July public hearing, but at least we get our foot in the door because we have to notify the state 35 days prior. So that would be one thing to do.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah.
I'd like to take a break. Would you be willing to talk to Patty about her concern during the break?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a recess and go to that.
this does not just affect me. In regards to the light that I have on my house.
Yeah.
This will affect every single homeowner in this entire city. Which will also include the new development, because these newer homes, they put lights on their garage, both sides. They have a porch light. None of them, absolutely none of them shine down the way that this is written. The light that I have on my house, it's not clear glass. To help so that the light wouldn't be so bright, I put a film. It's a semi-transparent film through the glass. But because of the way Bob's living room sits, because we sit up higher on our side of the road, it shines in his living room. That means I have to take my light down, because any light that I put on my front porch right there, which is right there by my door, is gonna shine in his living room, period. It doesn't matter if it shines down or not, it's gonna shine in his living room. No, it doesn't go, our light doesn't go onto the sidewalk. But because of how our house sits, it shines to where you can see it, just like everybody else's house.
So that could-
So being ignored with this is irritating to me. Because like I say, this is gonna affect everybody in the city that has a front porch light or a garage door light, or we have a floodlight over our garage because the back of our house is so dark. You know, it's a motion light, but still, it's there.
So that would fall under security.
Right,
As
right.
far as the front porch thing goes, so. Is diffusing the film or?
I mean, it's diffused as much as I can diffuse it without blocking out the light.
Right, so I'm just wondering if by having a hurricane or, you know, a cover over it like that, if that diffuses it enough to make it so it's not direct, is that shielded
Well,
enough?
but
What is it?
everybody-
Maybe the
everybody
question
would-
is, what is shielded?
Everybody would have to they'd have to put different lights on their front porches or their garages,
Right.
all of that. So that's just something to think about. Because like I said, it's not just gonna affect me, it's gonna affect everybody.
All right, let's get back in session. Do we have something more to discuss?
I think that's why I said last time. I know that it's affecting, but I also know that if you've got a year,
Right,
I think anybody, if it's $120, it's $10 a month set aside to replace your
fixture.
That's a
fixture.
major light, a porch light is more down to
Oh, yeah.
$25-30.
Oh, yeah.
So, Walt,
Yes,
Or
when you come up,
I've got an aluminum gutter company. It's got a lot of scrap aluminum. Maybe we should make some little hoods with a tab and
I think
try
there'd
it
be a
out.
conflict of interest
Yeah,
here.
no, I'm just saying, we could test it out. I could get the guys to build a few of them with, you know, a 4-inch diameter or something with a tab so it would flex it. We could test it out and see what it does on a regular porch light, you know, just what are those called, hurricanes?
Well, no, I was thinking, that's what I always called any fixture over a light like that, I call it hurricane, but I don't know when it's a fixture that's on the side of the house, I don't know what it's called, but it's, anyway. So, Paul, what I was wondering is when you go and gather some samples of lighting options for residents, can
Yeah.
you look at specifically porch, you know, that the sconces or whatever that get mounted on the side of a house for the garage and front door and all that? Could you get some samples of what would be acceptable? And then
okay,
another definition question for me is how do you define shielded? If you diffuse the light, like in a fixture, is that considered shielded? It's like if you put a diffusing film on the glass of a fixture.
That's really, no, because there's still potential for the light not to make that 90-degree. You know, you could still have light going in all directions, and it's kind of interesting. In fact, lights that are designed to go in all directions really don't do a very good job in lighting. So I recall a presentation where there's this nice big bulb on top of this pole, and someone took a picture at night and you couldn't see the person standing next to the pole because the light was going off into the sky. And so you really want to be able to focus the light. That's sort of what we're looking at here is keeping the focus on where light is necessary and avoiding placing light where it's not really required.
I guess the concern is that a light on the side of your house, that you can see from the street. If you're walking,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
it's pretty common.
yeah, just sort of work with my own experience. When we put our new lights in, we made sure everything was going down for that particular purpose, so we weren't lighting across the street. Going back to the original question, though, let me come up with some acceptable examples for residential. And maybe some pictures might help out. Just
Yeah.
something as part of a fact sheet saying these are considered acceptable, they will be downward, you know, they can be put above a door, above a garage, and they're not shining across your neighbor's front window kind of thing. So let me follow up on that for you.
Okay,
Well, just as when I was looking for my lights, because I've got two of them to do. There's a on Lowe's, on Amazon, if you put in dark light, there is very specific light fixtures
So
for
you're
every
looking-
example.
okay, so you were looking at parking lot kind of fixture.
Yeah, but I was also looking at,
your
I mean,
house.
yeah,
Okay.
because I mean, there's, and it lists, you know, all different, and they all are listed under dark sky.
Dark sky.
Mhm.
Great, all right, so let's move on to Title 11.
Okay, I submitted attached to my memo is an exhibit that goes through the revamped Title 11. If you recall, we're starting to go through a page by page review, and I just suggested that maybe it might be better just for me to rewrite everything, and then you folks can kind of pick it that way instead of trying to revise the existing language. So this is my first draft, my planning commission draft, if you will. It covers all the bases, I think, of what you were looking at, getting it moved from Title 11, putting it all in Title 10. So there's some connection there. I just kind of briefly outline this. The core of the document that we have in Title 11 remains. I think I basically shuffled things around so it's easier to follow instead of jumping back and forth. If you're doing a subdivision, it goes right to the point of here's the application, here's how it's going to be reviewed, and if it's approved, here are the steps to complete it. And I'm hoping that's going to be a little easier. Your current language has some conflict between who does property boundary adjustments. I just clarified that those are staff level decisions, and the only people who receive notice are the applicants. Those are very simple types of applications to do. I provide some flexibility in partition applications in terms of what must be submitted. The reason I bring that up is that this is usually something that you will find people enter into the planning realm only once or twice in property ownership. And my experience is someone wants to divide the property so they could sell off a chunk to a neighbor, or they want to divide it so their kids can build a house on, that sort of thing. I think the bar doesn't have to be that extremely high for submittal for a partition. The submittal for the application, not the plat, but just the submittal for the application. And I just try to make it a little bit easier for folks to kind of do the upfront work and then hire the surveyor at the back end. We have new provisions on private streets and easements. Let's see. One thing that we ran into with the new subdivision is that they didn't return to the commission within a year. And so I changed it to have 2 years for submittal of the final plat. And it just takes time in this day and age, especially if we're requiring construction. So if you get your approval in November of 1 year, you may not be able to get a contract out there to do the digging and the paving and everything until summer or fall. And by then you're too late to come back and record the document. So 2 years seem to be pretty reasonable. The other thing too, and this is something that I think most everyone in planning has faced, the issue of series partitionings, where you take a big chunk of land, cut off 2 pieces, build a house on each, and then you take the remaining third piece and partition it again, and then come back the following year and partition that again. So you basically create a subdivision through the partitioning exercise. If that possibility exists, then the application has to be processed as a subdivision. And that way the city is assured that all the streets and curbing and sewer and water will be in there. Again, this is just a brief outline. My sole purpose was just to say, here it is. I'd like you to spend now the time, take out the red pencil and kind of make your notes and markups, and maybe get back to this at our June meeting. I don't believe we have any applications coming in for the hearing. So we do have plenty of time at the June meeting to kind of review some of this stuff. So again, this is just a basic introduction. I really want to get at least something in the door this month, and then we could spend the next month or two kind of reviewing the material. So unless there's any other questions, that's kind of it for the staff review, or the 30,000-foot review, if you will.
All right, well, those are great changes. I remember in my mind is, you made the comment a while back that there were things in 10 and 11 that addressed the same topic. And so they were kind of overlapping. 10 and 11 both addressed a topic common to both of them. Did you find instances of that?
Well, what I want to do, I am still diving into this particular project, that I'm going to be making sure that if this is adopted and brought into 10, there's a consistency. For example, I will probably make a recommendation, and I have it in my notes, that under the individual zones there, under permitted uses, it would include property boundary adjustments, subdivisions, and partitions. So that connection is definitely made. Because right now, there's nothing in Title 10 that specifically allows a partition. So I want to be sure that that is put in there. So there's going to be a few more details to ensure sort of consistency across the board. And again, anytime you have definitions anywhere in the code, it should be put in the general definition section. So we always have a quick reference for that. So this is my first draft. Break out the red pencils or pens and go for it.
You know, this is 20 pages. It's not as exciting as the lighting document, I have to say that.
No, and
Uh,
and if you're having difficulty falling asleep, this might help.
Yeah,
I recognize that.
that's my point. Should we take it in bites of 10 pages, or do you want us to maybe come back with all 20 next time?
Well, you know, I think you raise a good point. I think at a minimum, I suggest you get through page 5.
Oh, okay.
Actually, in fact, that is probably a good first bite because that sets the stage and it extends to the very top of page 6.
Okay.
So it's just lot averaging. That was the end of it. After that, then you get into the, you know, you start getting into the weeds on the details. So yes, if you could at least spend your time on the first 5 pages, that would be fantastic.
Okay. What do you think we have to offer? This is pretty technical. We're not technical. What should we be looking for?
Doesn't make sense because one of the things that I find in my years of planning, I think we write for, unfortunately, too often developers or attorneys. And part of it is that an attorney hired by the city has to defend what we do. So I want to make sure it makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, you work with this stuff more than most folks in the community, but still, it's not as if you're doing this every day. Doesn't make sense. Is there a glitch in the system that we can improve? Look at it as a system, and does it make sense? And I think work from that point.
If there's something we don't understand, maybe it needs clarification. It's not just that.
Precisely.
All right. Lynn, did you get a copy of this? Where are you, Lynn?
I'm sitting right here in my chair. I'm
Me too.
actually, I'm actually in South Carolina.
All right. Now, this came to you in an email, but she's given us copies here, so you could drop by. When are you coming back? Are you?
Maybe not. Yeah, it'll probably be right after July 1st.
So our next meeting is June 17th. So you're gonna be doing this by Zoom again if we're so lucky.
Yes.
Maybe, so there's not really an easy way to get a printed copy to you.
No.
And it's hard to read on a phone. I don't know. Do you think you'll be able to participate in these first 5 pages? How would you do that? Can we help you do that?
I'd probably just have to take notes, write it down.
Okay, just read it on your computer and take some notes and, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're willing to do that, great. I won't worry about you. And thankfully, we got it down to 5 pages.
I know, that's great.
All right, well, I sure appreciate, are you on vacation? Are you traveling? Are you with friends?
Yeah, we're visiting friends and kind of a vacation, might be a lifestyle.
Well, great. What's it like back there? What have you run into that surprised you?
A lot of rain.
Oh, shucks. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's warm.
All right, warm rain
And humid.
and humid.
Yes.
All right, well, we're gonna meet back here, July 17th is our
June
scheduled
17th.
meeting.
June 17th.
I meant to say June 17th. Thank you, Sue. And anything else before
Yeah,
we, oh, we got updates.
and I've asked a couple of times, our Economic Development Committee is asked to review about above ground tanks. And I forgot that Jenny asked me to ask about that.
Remember, above ground tanks keep coming up, Walt. What did we asked you a question last time, didn't we?
I can recall that I think that was deferred to either the downtown or economic development. And I
Yeah, we're the
think,
ones that brought it up.
yeah, but there was something that I noted that Well, let me go ahead. What type of above ground tanks are you talking about? I may have
Well-
dropped the ball on this and I will
We're
accept
just
that.
wanting to be proactive on the fact that we do have a incoming business that is doing underground tanks,
Right?
but if there should be something going on, we just want to make sure that we've got something covered.
So you're talking about fuel gasoline tanks? And
But it could be,
like-
where are we also with, is there a size regulation on residential, on propane tanks or anything like that? So
Well, I used to have oil heat here and
those
so,
houses over there are right here like this, they're. You know, I've got a little bit of land and I've got a propane tank, but you know, when you're like this and you're like this and you're, you know, it's one thing to have one on your barbecue, but when you're, I mean, not that they're doing gas over there, but a lot of people have got propane tanks,
So it sounds like there's a concern that
huh?
the gas station may decide to add above ground tanks for some reason.
Hmm.
What would they run into if they did that? Is there already something in place that doesn't
I
work?
would, yeah, I would think that is covered under two things, building regulations.
I didn't see anything.
DEQ, there's certain requirements for the tanks. For example, in Dundee, they have a vertical propane tank at the gas station.
Yeah. That's commercial.
Yeah, and that's commercial. I think, I'm not sure exactly what the regulations are for like above ground oil tanks for like residential areas. Um,
I'm not clear on your specific question. Is it the gas station with fuel tanks above ground? You're concerned about that?
Mhm.
And you did not find anything in building code?
No, and I didn't find anything about propane tanks.
And then the other concern is propane tanks on private property. Is there a limit to how big they can be? Is that your
Yeah.
Or
concern?
how close they can be to.
Yeah.
Or how close they can be to whatever?
Yeah,
okay.
Milton County might have building codes might have something.
Yeah, I think that would be logical. Let me also post it on the OPN for like, asking for a little help for direction. So I will make a note of that on tanks for propane, oil, fuel, whatever. Any limits on res? And just see if any other communities have some regulations on that.
Thank you. Is that good, Sue?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I guess we're ready to go to housing grant.
Well,
Update.
apparently, in fact, I can put both C and D together. Apparently contracts have been signed. 3J is going to be working on the housing grant. 3J Consulting out of Portland, and keep forgetting his name. Last name's Rux.
Yes, Doug.
Doug, thank you. I want to say Dave, but it's Doug Rux. He's going to be doing the technical assistance grant. And so contracts have been signed. And as Sue mentioned, I think we're having one of our first kickoff meetings on June 5.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's going to start things off, and I think they will probably come in with memos or something. My role is just to, as material comes in, I just make sure that things are consistent, provide commentary. But basically, 3J and Doug will be handling the details and making the presentations, which works out real well.
And as a heads up on that strategy meeting on the 5th, it's early, it's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's behind Larson House in their backyard. So that's what time it's set. I'm just,
Okay.
it's such an odd time for us during the week on a Wednesday that I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that.
Okay. And then finally, when it comes to the transportation system plan, I've talked to our ODOT field rep, our DLCD rep. There's gonna be a class or presentation on I think June 9th, where they're gonna introduce, the best way to make the application. I have some previous applications that I'm gonna be sort of cribbing from. I think these were successful. One thing that was and this was the purpose of the TGM grant is to have a significantly updated transportation system plan for the city. I think it's certainly justified. It's going to be very competitive. It's going to be very competitive. They only have so much money. They apportion it by the region. And even after the region gets the money, sometimes they give a little more to larger cities, or if the move is to do a little bit more for smaller communities, they may go in that direction. So the main thing of making the application is to get a foot in the door. If we get the funding, fantastic. If we don't, we're at least notifying the state that a TSP is very important for the community. And maybe we don't get it the first time, but as was pointed out to me, somewhere down the line, they wouldn't let us get this far unless they thought there was a need. So I just want to let you know I'm working on the application, and that needs to be submitted by the end of July. And there is that presentation class in June, and I'll give you some more information at the next meeting.
Great. Well, I have curiosity about the opportunity for us to have a written update on the housing grant and the technical assistant grant that would precede our meetings here and able to be put maybe along with an agenda of a city council meeting or on the website, so that concerned citizens would be updated without having to ask me.
Yeah, what's going on? I tell you what, at the June 5 meeting, might have a conflict that evening with another meeting. But anyway, at the meeting, I'll certainly raise that question. And
Thank you.
even if I cannot attend that particular meeting, I could always contact Steve and Doug directly and just say, hey, can you provide at least even a page summary for the
Yes.
planning commission, just to let them know what you've done? Even if it's like, we met on this date, we discussed 3 things, and the coffee was great, and kind of leave it at that. But I think that's a real good idea, and I will go ahead and follow up with emails.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
Any other questions or anything else?
Can I get information on the meeting on June 5th? Because I don't, it's kind of odd that we don't have that information. Or maybe it's not
I
just
really
on Zoom.
don't know. See, I must have gotten it from Jenny.
Is anybody in the city on the loop on this, Walt? Like,
Yeah, I got a invite. Angie, tomorrow, let me go ahead and forward the invite that I got, but it was sort of like a kickoff meeting, I think it was called.
okay.
And interesting.
Have to be 4 o'clock, which is just really strange because so many people are still at work.
Yeah. Angie, let me follow up with that tomorrow. Would that work for you?
Yes, please.
I assume that's open.
Okay, will do.
It's open to the public.
Mhm. But it's, it's geared to the committees, the city council, planning, economic development, and downtown.
Okay.
Is what it's
Yeah.
geared.
Okay, got it.
All right, well, thank you, Walt. Thanks for joining us, Lynn. Have a good, great continued vacation. We'll see you in a month.
Okay,
Sounds great.
Let's-
okay, and don't forget to go to Waffle House, Lynn.
You know, that's funny. There's one right at the end of the road here.
All right.
Watch those gators.
Yeah, there you go. Take care, everyone. Great
Watch your
evening.
dog with the gators.
That's the illegal stuff.